Hi, welcome to the Gamesplainer. I'm Jeff the Gamesplainer and today I'm Gamesplaining January 2022. So it is time for my top 10 list of games I played through January, and there was a heck of a lot of games played, not as much as usual years. Usually I'm kind of 90 to 100. This year I was up to 70-ish through January. This is just the month where I tend to play a lot of games, and also I go away for a week, and that just gives me a lot of time with a lot of people around me to play a lot of games. So let's get straight into it. My number 10 game for January is Poetry for Neanderthals. Now, I am very aware that this is so outside the purview of games I would normally do, especially games that would hit a top 10 list, especially a game that would hit a top 10 list in a month that is so dense with games. But it surprised me also, to be honest with you. But the benefit or beauty of this game is that it works with any number of people. So I found myself quite often when I was away camping being surrounded by 12 people wanting to play a game, for example, and 14 people, 15. There's so darn many people, and there's so few games that play up to that many people. This game, Poetry for Neanderthals, plays to any number of people. There's so few games that do that, I thought it worth kind of mentioning straight away. This is not a game that's ever going to get a Gamesplaination from me. It was put out by the same people who brought us Exploding Kittens. That's the set of games it's in. I was given this game probably over a year ago, and it took me a while to get it to the table simply because I just haven't been surrounded by people with lockdowns, etc., etc. I haven't been surrounded by large numbers of people. But this game has hit my list for games that I can pull out no matter what the number of people. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to have a game night that has a heap of people at it. I can at least play one game with all of them. I really appreciate that. The whole game itself, just so you're aware, I know I'm talking about this for a while, but just so you're aware, the game itself is a game where you're given a card and you have to describe the word on the card without obviously using the word, but using single syllable words in what you're saying. So saying one word is going to make it really hard. If you can find a way to get a sentence together of single syllable words, then you're going to be able to tell people what is on that card. You could go for that'll give you 1 point. You could go for 3 points by going for the second part of the word or the combination of things. So it's kind of two words, an easy and a hard. And the easy one is in the hard word. There's a not much thinking on this game. It's a game that will move through relatively quickly and everyone has a go. And the beauty of the game is there's a blow up mallet, and if someone says a word that is more than one syllable, the person next to them hits them over the head. That sounds really stupid, and it is, and it's just fun. And I think that's what we tend to forget with gaming, especially in this realm of gaming, that games are just supposed to be fun. And so if you're just sitting around with nothing much else to do, this is actually a really good game. My number 9 game for January is Glass Road. So Glass Road is an Uwe Rosenberg game that came out in 2013, which is a while back now, but it's just been re-released. So I've finally managed to get my hands on a copy of it. I really appreciate it. It plays relatively quickly and there's enough to think about to keep you moving forward. There will be a Gamesplaination of this one coming out sometime in the next month or so. I'm getting a little bit of a backlog of games that have been filmed and waiting to get the Gamesplainations out, so I'm not sure exactly when, but look out for it when it happens. The whole idea of the game is you have many different elements that create glass, or I think the other one's pottery, I can't remember exactly what it is, but you need to find a way to up the amount of stuff that you have so that you can up the amount of glass that you can create. But within all of that, you have a board, which it's a really standard Uwe board where you have only a few spots open. You can release more spots to put in more tokens, and that kind of enables you to get some more points. Speaking of points, there's not a huge amount of points on this game when you get to the end. It's not one of these games that'll play to 100 points. It's a game where you can win the game if you get somewhere near 20 points. You'll find that most people will probably get stuck around about the 10 points mark. So there's not a huge number of points, but there's only 4 turns in the actual game. So there's a lot of stuff to kind of think about and get through as you're doing the game. But the whole idea of it is that you have cards everyone has an identical batch of cards. You're choosing a set of those cards and then you're playing them. If you play it and no one else has chosen that card, you get to do both things on the card. If you play it and someone else also has it, then both of you get to do one thing on that card. So there's a lot of thinking involved in it, but it's a relatively simple game that just moves through really quickly. My number 8 game for January is Cascadia. Now, I'm pretty sure Cascadia hit my top 10 lists previously in the last month. I really appreciate this game. I really like it. It's such a simple, easy game to play, but there's enough thinking to make it worthwhile at the table. The whole idea is that you're taking a piece of land or a tile that has lands and seas and different types of land on it, and an animal, and you're placing the animal onto tiles that can take that animal. But each animal scores differently at the end of the game, and so you're desperately trying to get whatever the scoring pattern is worked out amongst the animals you have in front of you, as well as you're getting scores for the largest areas of land that you have at the table. There's a real fine thinkiness on what's going to happen and what you can do within your pattern on the table in front of you. It's a really, really worthwhile game. My number 7 game for January is Athenium Mystic Library. Now, Athenium will get released this weekend, same weekend as this video gets released. It feels like it's an update of the video that I did last weekend, which was Ex Libris. So that's a magical library game and you have to put things into your library. Athenium, you have to put little tokens into your library, but you can move them around if you've got the right card to do so, in order to fulfill criteria or patterns of these books within your library that will move along, and kind of you can spend a wand to get the points from that, but you have to have enough wands to be able to continue doing that. And there's a little bit of forward and back with that, and the whole essence is it is a card drafting game, but when you play a card, you're playing a card for yourself and for the people next to you. So there's a lot of different thinking going on with this game. I really appreciate this. I find that this plays really easily and gets to the table really easily, with enough going on to be constantly thinking about and go, oh yeah, I can do that, or I can build towards that. Oh, I need to get that built towards. How do I do that? How many turns is it going to get there? Can I make it before that card disappears from the table? There's a lot of thinking going on with this one. My number 6 game for January is Castell. Now, Castell is one of these games that I was chasing for ages to try and get. I've finally got it. It's taken me years, it feels like, to get the right game. And I've really appreciated it. I'm so glad that I did continue the chase for this one. It's one of these games that it works, but there's a lot going on the map. What you're trying to do is build human pyramids within a set of rules of you can only have this amount of space used on the bottom ones, and each level up has to have less guys on it. But if you've moved up this, then you can go the same number, or there's a whole bunch of different elements that can change. And through changing those, you'll be able to go higher and wider. And each few turns, there's a competition or a major competition where if you can get to the city that has that major competition, you can get the points for how wide and how high and how many of this certain number of token person that you've got in your tower. It's a really good game. There's a little bit of extra thinking on this one than I would expect, but nonetheless a really good game. I will have the Gamesplainer of this one out in a few weeks as well. My number 5 game for January is Living Forest. Now, Living Forest is really interesting. I've only played this as a 2-player game. I really desperately want to get it on the table as a 4-player game, because it's a game that you just continually work your way through until someone gets 12 points of one of the 3 elements. And I think that going after a single individual thing may not necessarily be the right way to go. You actually need to kind of chase all of them and allow one of them to get to 12 before the others. I played this game relatively recently, and I played specifically trying to get the point, which is one of the final things. And my wife finished, and I was nowhere near being able to get across the line. But I think that if I'd gone after each of the elements and just allowed points to be there as well, I would have had a better chance at winning. There's a lot of stuff going with this game. As I say, I really desperately want to play it with the 4 players, but as a 2-player game, it works really well, and you kind of find yourself chasing the different elements. So the whole idea of the game is you've got cards face down. You can turn over as many of those cards until you have these symbols on your cards. If there's 2, that's fine. You can play 2 of the elements that are showing, and each card put down gives you a different number of different elements. As soon as you have a 3rd one, you need to stop putting cards out, and you can only play 1 of the elements that's showing. And so there's this push-pull of how many times do I continue pushing? How many of these elements do I have in my deck? How many have already been played in previous rounds? There's a lot of thinking with this. I really, really appreciate it. My number 4 game for January is Red Rising. Now, Red Rising is a Stonemaier game that came out, I believe it was last year, or it might have been the year before. I'm a little bit confused with dates at the moment, simply because quarantine, etc., etc. Everyone's dealing with it. Let's move on. The whole idea of this game is it can play to 6 players to start with, which is a huge bonus, which also means it doesn't get to the table that often, but it's very much in my back pocket for if I've got a slightly larger group, I will definitely be pulling this one out. I really enjoy it. The whole idea is you've got a hand of cards and you're trying to trade cards for what you can see on the table and put a card out, bring a card back in, and then move along some different elements that will give you points at the end of the game, depending on how far you've managed to get down those elements or how many rubies you've managed to get in, etc., etc. At some point, you need to start taking or adding cards from the actual deck. And the cards are actually looking for benefits of other cards. So you can have this card that needs to be paired with another card, and it tells you specifically which card. There's a fairly thick deck there, which means that you can go after that other card, but that card may never actually show its head. Or even worse, one of the other players may have it and be looking for the card that you have, and neither of you are willing to put that card in as a played card because you want to get the partner. And so there's a lot of thinking with, what pattern of cards do I want to get? It's extraordinarily random, but there's a lot of push-pull on, do I get rid of this card? Is this one going to get me more points, or is that one going to get me more points at the end of the game? To kind of get your head around as you're playing. I really appreciate this. I find that the Stonemaier games have been hit with a negativity which isn't necessarily warranted. I really appreciate the Stonemaier games. I have all of them. I think I've done games plans for almost all of them. I just really like them, and I'm going to continue probably liking the Stonemaier games because I just value what is brought to the table on those. My number 3 game for January is Galaxy Trucker. So I managed to get a game of Galaxy Trucker out. I really, really, really love this game. It's one of those games that's going to always hit my top 10 list if I play it in a month. I managed to get a game out that went into the 4th season, and I really enjoyed that. So the whole idea is that there's kind of 2 portions on the game. The first half is you're building your ship, and then the second half is you send your ship out to travel and come up against a whole bunch of cards. On the 4th one, there's a very large ship, and so you have to take your time to think about what goes next to what and how to build out, and there's a lot of stuff going on with that. I really appreciate it. I actually really, really like this game. There's a different thinking going on when you're building a ship with what could possibly hit us as opposed to just build. And I find that people who know this game and have played it will usually do fairly well. People who are new to the game will usually only get away with, a few dollars worth, whereas people who know the game getting 30, 40, 50. I think going to the 4th game, I managed to cross over $100, space bucks, whatever they call them, in this particular game. But I really appreciate it. I really, really enjoy this game. And I find that this is one of those games where you will either really, really love it and really enjoy it, or you'll really hate it, depending on where your mindset is at. So people who want to kind of stop and just think about everything they're doing, they're probably going to struggle. People who are willing to just go and go and go are going to probably enjoy their play. My number 2 game for January is Ragusa. Now, Ragusa is another one of these games that always hits the tops of my lists because it's just a fun game. There's enough going on with it for you to think. I tried with this last play of it, I tried going for the fish, and I found that the fish doesn't work unless there's someone else who also steps into it. Because the whole idea of the game is when you place a token down, you get all the stuff that that token is next to, so you're going to do 3 things. But if someone else places on the same hex that you're already on, they do their thing, and then you get to do the thing again. And then if you place again, you get to do the thing for every house that you have on that hex. So there's a lot of kind of push and pull on, oh, I want to go to there, I want to go to there, I need to go to there to get these things, to get that thing, to do this. It's such a delightful experience of play, but it really does need, for the fish thing especially to work, you've got to have someone else going after it so you can get the fish even though you haven't put guys onto the hex. I think that's the case with all of the different ways to play the game, the different things that you go after. You really do need other people to play into those particular hexes also. And my number 1 game for January is Brass Birmingham. I hope I said that right, to my delightful wife, who never watches these anyway, but always has a go at me about saying Birmingham. It's Birmingham. So, Brass Birmingham, I think if you've ever watched any of my top 10s, you'll probably find that I've talked about Brass Birmingham in a lot of them. Every time it plays, it's pretty much going to hit the top or top couple guaranteed, depending on what else is around it. It has been within those top couple of games since it came out. It's such a good game. The whole idea of it is that the game is split into 2 halves. You need to put in a network of trains or canals, depending on which half of the game you're in. You need to build in the cities, and it costs you money, and there's so darn much thinking going on with this game, yet there's only a handful of things that you can do. And it's one of these games that just really sits so well with my way of thinking, my like of games. Is there's a relatively simple rule set on it, but they're so dense in the thinking. And this game is just dense on the thinking all the way through. And I just love it. I really appreciate it. I would really like to play it with the full 4 players, but that doesn't happen too often. But playing it as a 2-player game, it plays really well as well. I think it's one of these games that's scaled for each player count extraordinarily well. So that's my top 10 games from January. I hope that you appreciate it. I hope that you have come to know some new games if you haven't seen them before. If you have any comments or suggestions, please write them below. If you have any games that you would like to be gamesplained, please shoot me an email to thegamesplainer@gmail.com. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter @thegamesplainer to keep up to date with the games that I'm playing. Subscribe to my videos to keep up to date with the games that I'm gamesplaining. And until next time, enjoy gaming.